So this is RP again, and I am having a nice cup of coffee over here at the handlebar in the middle of Gilman Barracks. So in today's video, I will be talking about the CFMoto XO-1 Papio Racer that Yu Heng, Singapore CFMoto distributor, has lent to me to run around for the past week or so. Now, many of our American friends are also going to know this bike by the name of the CFMoto Papio SS as well. So this little mini sport bike shares nearly everything in common with the XO2 in my previous video, and is certainly a head turner. So let's dive into the nitty-gritty of things. So I want to start the video off with performance. Now, numbers are something that means a lot to the pragmatist in me. The Papio Racer is powered by a 126cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine that puts out 9.4 horsepower and 9.2 newton-meters of torque. The engine itself is more of a screamer than a low-end tugboat, in my opinion. Most of the power comes in up high at a very narrow power band between 7,500 and 8,500 RPM. It really does feel at times like you are riding a 50cc two-stroke sport bike from the 80s, which helps the retro image some, I guess. To add on to the relatively high revving engine compared to most 125cc bikes, the final gear ratio is a very tall 2.6, and so are the 5th and 6th gears in the transmission as well. To compensate for that lack of low-end power, the first gear is geared incredibly short, and you can definitely feel that dive when shifting into second gear. So with this bike at my weight of around 76 kilograms plus a 4 kilogram backpack, the highest speed I have ever clocked on the onboard speedo is about 109 kilometers per hour. That was on the flat with a nice backwind, good shifting technique, and of course drafting behind a larger MPV. Now, considering that the max listed speed on the spec sheet is 90 kilometers per hour, I am tempted to think the number is a result of a overly happy meter. So I'm guessing my GPS speed is closer to 98 to 100 kilometers per hour at most. Most of the time, however, with lazy shifting and normal wind conditions, I can still easily reach up to about 85 to 90 kilometers per hour. The Racer comes with 12-inch alloy wheels front and back, and upside down forks at the front with clip-on bars. The suspension is set pretty stiff for my height and weight, and it has a very short wheelbase. So handling wise, the bike is incredibly twitchy, if I have to put a word to it. Nearly any input will result in immediate feedback, so it makes for a very fun experience in tight corners. At the same time, you can also feel everything on the road with clarity in your hands, from the tar snakes to the manholes. Braking is tight and powerful. You get a 210mm single disc up front and a 190mm single disc at the back. So it stops on the dime with very little mechanical input at the front brake lever. But also, depending on your body weight and height, the weight transfer when braking might vary a bit. But personally, for me, with moderate to heavy braking at speed, the Papio Racer exaggerates the typical sport bike fishtailing, where the nose and front tire dives and the rear has a propensity of skirting the ground underneath. You get a 7-liter fuel tank with the Papio Racer as well. This time I did not have enough time to do a proper fuel economy and range test. But since it uses the exact same engine, transmission, gear ratios, and has the exact same weight as the XO2 Trail, I am going with an estimate that it can't be any worse than a fuel efficiency of 27.5 kilometers per liter and a range of 193 kilometers, which is quite good. As that test was done off-road with a less aerodynamic body. Even with heavy-handed throttle use and stop-and-go traffic, I expect the average fuel economy is probably going to be close to or around 29 kilometers per liter. So let's start off the notable features section with a little disclaimer. The crash bars you see on a bike do not come stock. These are aftermarket from Stuntex. The light side LED panels are also not stock with the base motorcycle, but they are optional add-ons provided by CFMoto themselves. They can display a bunch of animated designs and emojis programmed through a Bluetooth application from your phone and are easily wired into a pre-existing connection on your stock bike. Take note though, for the Singapore market itself, the panels were not part of the model sent for homologation, so take it with a pinch of salt. Beyond that, the only other electronics you will find on bike are dual-channel ABS. Just like with most other non-flagship bikes, the ABS on the Papio Racer cannot be disabled, nor does it need to be disabled. You also get a chunky set of 12-inch tubeless tires front and back. The tire profile on the stock tires is flatter to mellow out that twitchy handling and give the bike better traction while upright. Alright, let's start off this section with the controls, and later on we'll move on to the cluster. Now, as I said with my previous video with the XO2 Papio Trail, the left and right hand controls, the quality is better than I would expect in a Class 2B or a 125cc class motorcycle. The build quality is incredibly nice. It has a very tight build, very nice, no wiggle room. I did mention that the horn button on the XO2 has the same problem as the XO1 over here, being that the horn button is a bit too far to the right side of the left hand side cluster. I think it ought to be either out of the way of the turn signal by being below or slightly closer to the left, so that, you know, I don't really overreach and then just slam onto this instead of slamming into the turn signal cancel. On the right hand side, I did mention I also like the dedicated hazard light switch that would also have come on the XO2 Papio Trail. The XO1 Racer over here has a dedicated switch as well, and I always love bikes that have a dedicated hazard light switch. The kill switch and the start engine button, they are both integrated into a single package over here. I like it. It makes everything more sleek and neat, as well as reduces points of failure, in my opinion. Talk about the digital cluster. The digital cluster on the XO2 Racer, if I'm going to pull back out a bit, it's set closer to the left of your triple clamp, your top triple clamp, instead of the right as it would have been on the XO2 Trail. Now, the features of the dash is going to be the exact same thing as I said with the XO2 Trail. It's very beautiful, it's very retro, I love it. In my personal opinion, this is the kind of style of digital cluster that I like, or instrument cluster, with a analog tacho. And I am going to say this is very important because an analog tacho gives you the best possible feedback on your engine RPMs, because you're going to want to keep it between these 2 points, which is between about 7,500 and 8,500 RPM. Now you're going to have your typical lights over here, the neutral selector light, but over here just above the center of the needle you're going to find the shift light, which I think it's a bit conservative. It tells you to shift at 6,000 RPM instead of where I would naturally recommend you shift up at about 8,500 RPM for the best power. 6,000 is if you want to really maximize the fuel efficiency at the cost of it feeling like a slug. Now on the right hand side over here where the digital cluster is, you're gonna find at the top over here the neutral, the gear shift, the gear selector indicator. Here you have your clock, digital speedometer, a fuel gauge, as well as this is where your information readout is. Now the information readout can be toggled by the buttons over here at the side. Now this is a point of contention for me between the XO1 and the XO2. The XO2 trail has your cluster closer to the right, so the buttons are a little bit more accessible with a left hand because the buttons are on the left. Now with the digital cluster or the instrument cluster being on the left on the XO1 instead of on the right, but with the buttons not being any different in position, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And even without this onboard unit that all Singaporean motorcycles must have, even without it, it's still a bit of a bit difficult to reach into it because of where your clip-on handlebars are. So you have to really try and put a finger there and then toggle it. So the first readout over here I have is the odometer, followed by trip A, trip B. As well, you have an onboard internal voltmeter readout on your digital cluster, a very useful feature to have. This is the LED backlight level. It's automatic, just ignore it. It just tells you what is the brightness level that the LED panel is. It goes higher the brighter the ambient light is, and the lower the darker the ambient light is. And that's about it. Last thing I wanted to point out is the fuel tank cap. Now this is something that I talked about in my XO2 trail video as well, because they use the exact same components for almost everything. The difference only being the shape of the plastics to give it a different aesthetic. Now I had the same complaint. When you turn the key on to the fuel tank cap, it gives you a separate, gas tank cap like that, instead of it having a hinge that, just holds itself up over here or probably over here like that. On most motorcycles, you have to have you get a separate tank cap, very similar to how dirt bikes and some scooters have. Not a deal breaker. This is just a pedant's anal nitpicking. Alright, so same deal with the XO-1 Papio Racer over here. I'm going to walk you through all the bits and bobs that you need to know to figure out how to do your daily or rather monthly maintenance tasks on your own, if you really want to, or if you just want to try before you cry to a mechanic. Let's start with the battery. Now, as you can see, I've pulled off the left panel over here. The left panel is over here and I have removed it. It is held on by these two screws at two screw points here and over here. They are very easy to remove and they are held very snugly at this panel point located over here. Your battery is going to be found tucked over here in a very neat manner, very easy to access. Now, I have a bit of a problem because the keyhole here that would open up the seat, I think I got the wrong key, so I couldn't open the seat to show you where the regulator and the fuse box is. So if you want to know where the regulator and the fuse box is, just refer to my XO2 trail video where I managed to take off the seat and show the location of it. So the regulator will be somewhere in the center over here, directly under the seat. You would usually on the XO1 Racer turn the key, remove this and then this. and you would be able to access all those components. The fuse box, on the other hand, if I were to be correct and if my guess is right, the fuse box will be located directly underneath this panel over here. So it's going to be tucked away, not within immediate access by hand. So you will need to remove this to access your fuse box. Now, if you come down over here to the right hand side, on the right side of the engine, this is where your fuel, your oil filter cartridge is going to be found. It's just 3 bolts that you just need to remove, and you pop it out and there will be a small little oil filter cartridge. I like that. As I did mention with my XO2 trail video, the XO-1 Racer also has an internal fuel cartridge, and this is better than the usual screw-on oil filters that are very prone to being damaged and leaking. This one is a lot more secure in my opinion. The ergonomics of the bike is personally a mixed bag for me. I am 177 centimeters tall and I can easily shuffle my butt backward to get enough upper body space. The handlebars don't knock in my knees at full turn and I generally can control it with ease. Personally, it isn't any less comfortable than any other sport bike, big or small. But this is at a stoplight. The only thing it physically cannot do is go fast enough so that the wind buffets onto your chest and holds your upper body weight up during longer rides. And it isn't really the Papio Racer's fault, because it is a problem that literally every 125cc machine will have to face. Leg space wise, it also is the same as the trail. A rider my height doesn't get enough legroom and has to curl it up a lot more, and the shifter isn't really angled properly for shifting in with my leg length. I would personally get, at the very bare minimum, some new rear sets or a custom bracket in my own case, but it is great for shorter riders like my sister otherwise. The rider seat itself is acceptable. The pillion seat, on the other hand, is pretty much just a usable cowling with not much space or padding. Again, almost every race replica I've sat on, big and small, pretty much does the same thing. The bar end mirrors are gorgeous and they don't really get in the way of my hands at all. The mirrors themselves are a nice round shape and gives a great field of view for its size, but I feel my own upper body length places me a bit far too forward on the handlebars, so my eyes tend to glance down away from the road to look at the mirrors most of the time. Those same mirrors add a couple of centimeters to the overall width of the bike compared to the trail version, but the bike itself is so small on its own right and the total height is so low, you can literally go under the wing mirrors of a typical sedan or even a car park gantry. Wing wing. Again, like my concerns with the trail, I think it is very easy for drivers of SUVs and vans to not see you on the road. So you have to be extra vigilant on this or literally any mini moto. Also, at 114 kilograms, the Papio Racer is a very, very light bike. You can throw it around, push it up slopes, balance it on the side stand and spin it around with absolutely no problems at all. So the look and feel of the bike in my personal opinion, is the real selling point. It takes a lot of inspiration from retro 80s and 90s sport bikes like the 1989 CBR 250RR. It's got this pair of big doe-like round headlights set into a sharp short front cowl with X and O shaped reflectors, hence the name. The front turn signals are also integrated into the bodywork beautifully without being out of sight. So it is neat, doesn't stick out, and isn't prone to being damaged when dropped, just like my 05 ZX6R, and I absolutely love that. The rear panel work is also beautifully angular and stubby to give it that extra modern sporty look in juxtaposition to the retro front, and the provided belly pan gives the bike a fuller sport bike silhouette. I also appreciate that there isn't full fairings to show the neatly arranged engine and exhaust routing, even though I know the decision was for a practical reason for an air-cooled bike. The mirrors themselves are also a nice touch, where they give us round bar ends to really sell on that retro look and feel. I in particular like how the Papio Racer, just like the Trail, also has a nicely routed exhaust that sticks close to the bodywork and routes up high into an undertail end can. It makes everything look neat and symmetrical, and evokes a 2005 era of 600cc sport bikes that are, in my personal opinion, the best looking era. The stock exhaust notes are also beautiful, with this low poppy note to it when idle, and they are also still individually audible when brought up to higher RPMs. And the exhaust itself can also get pretty darn loud on a wide open throttle for a 125. In my personal opinion, the Papio Racer is pretty much for someone that specifically wants a mini-moto sport bike. And I think CFMoto was very smart in putting this out, as there really is no competitor in this category with the same combination of looks and size. And at 6,800 machine price, it is pretty affordable for what I consider a class of lifestyle or luxury products. Considering that the nearest competitor that also similarly functions like a piece of usable art, being the Honda 125 Monkey, costing approximately $9,500 for a parallel import. And yes, the Papio Racer is, at least in my opinion, a piece of art. It may not necessarily be artistic in the engineering sense, but it definitely is one in the design sense. The Papio Racer gets people turning their heads and smiling whenever they see it. and I'll be damned if it isn't up the alley of literally anybody who is an attention seeker on one of these. So what do you think about the Papio Racer? Do you also likewise think it is a beautiful piece of machinery? Leave your comments down in the comment section below. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon if you like my content. Stay safe, ride safe, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, bye bye.